a lot of corners are cut in order to jump that line.
Well, the thing is, for venture capitalists, I don't necessarily think that they're looking to build the next great company. They're in for the return. So also it depends on how early do you get in and when do you get out. And also things such as, and this is more of a Silicon Valley mentality that might have spread all over the world to some extent. That is the mentality of growth at all costs. And that it helped companies like Google, Facebook, Amazon to become dominant players as they are today. So for years, or actually, it's only the last 2 decades. When it's not that long time ago when you think about it. And so it's almost like, some of these deep-pocketed rounds investors or firms, they look at maybe there is growth and maybe there is a future, and when your company name becomes a verb, it's probably only time before it becomes a money machine. And that kind of mentality didn't used to prevail the way it does in today's world. And I wonder, what does that say about, of course, venture capital, but I don't really have very high moral ideals associated with them. Sorry, not sorry at all. But it's more like, just this world we live in. And then there's almost like zero patience for, I don't know, something substantial. And then, especially in this world that we're talking about, and none of us, the 3 of us in this room, really have that much to do with it. Especially, it's like, when you're talking about vast amounts of...
we all use their products, but we're not involved in their growth.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Okay, so there's something I can relate to in that sense. But yes, it's just, we're talking about dollars with the billion B associated with it. And in this world, it just seems like many of just numbers on a piece of paper.
But I think the tricky thing with that as well, the focus on return and profits, is that, like you said, they're not necessarily determined to build sustainable long-term companies that can grow and create success for, your average person. And I think that's the issue, is that you've got these super rich people who understandably want to use their money to make more money and make themselves richer. Like, I'm not a big fan of that, but, I can't put myself in their shoes. I've never had $1 billion, so I don't know what their mentality is like. But the problem when you have that mentality is that when you're not focused on growth and sustainability, it creates opportunities for people that might not necessarily be sustainable, that don't have that amount of money. So all of a sudden you've got somebody that joins one of these companies as a marketing manager, and after 1 year it files for bankruptcy. So it does affect a lot of people that don't have that level of money. And I think that's just the area that needs to be looked at, is that there needs to be more emphasis on sustainability, I think, as opposed to quick profits.
Well, I understand that the reason we are being a little bit not as optimistic as usual is because we are definitely trying to analyze the reason behind all these failure stories and how come these money are just, like bubbles in the air and poof, they disappear. But actually, the fact that there are these growing number of unicorn companies, not only in the United States, but in China, in India, in other parts of the world. Actually, this is a relatively mature business model. And if we can, maybe we can't, based on just these 30-minute show, but if we can find out certain problems, certain challenges they face, and certain pitfall that they fail that leads to the failure, maybe we can help the world become a better place.
We can look at the successful ones too, because it seems like those companies, look, I'm sure they are placing a huge amount of emphasis on return, but it sounds like they're also doing something that makes them sustainable.
Of course, and the global unicorn hierarchy is dominated by Beijing-based ByteDance at $200 billion, followed by SpaceX and Ant Group, and new entries this year or in the last couple of years include Shein, WeBank, and Telegram, and they kind of show there are these dynamic shifts in unicorn valuations. But certainly this is one of those noticeable trends this year about, the way I'm going to name the topic of today's discussion is, instead of the death of tech unicorns, period, the death of tech unicorns, question mark. And also, I want to ask you, given all the things we've talked about, is any of it sustainable? Perhaps this drop of unicorn companies is a harsh dose of rationality that is much needed in this environment that rewards big promises and falls prey to hype. And what do you think drove all of these tech unicorns to the ground?
I mean, I think just going back to what you mentioned about sustainability, and I've also been emphasizing sustainability, I think it is something that's quite tricky to foresee, because I think that a lot of these companies have to project what people might potentially want and what they could use for a sustained period of time. So I think, obviously a lot of the responsibility falls on the company itself and the billion-dollar investors, like we've mentioned. But can they ever really know if their products, they might have the best product in the world, but how do they know that it's going to be something that large amounts of people will want to use on a long-term basis? I think it's quite a tricky thing for them to manage as well. I guess we have to cut them a little bit of slack, because they have to project whether their product is actually going to take off or not. Because there are a lot of amazing companies and products that just don't go anywhere for whatever reason. It doesn't, people don't respond to it, or, something better comes along. So there is a market element to it that doesn't fall on the shoulders of the companies and the investors, but a lot of it has to do with just the preferences of potential customers.
On top of that, we get to see that when you are creating a beautiful story to attract investment, you need a great idea, innovative idea, you need a great product, you need
to know how to sell that product as well.
Exactly. You need the ability to tell a good story, but that is only the initial start. After that, you need to have the ability to focus on sustainable growth. You need to find a way to diversify your revenue stream. You need to continue being able to make your story larger and more appealing.
And listen to your customers and find out what they want on a regular basis.
And in the meantime, if you are doing actually manufacturing business, if you are creating or, let's say, trying to come up with the next star product in your company, you have to consider the situation, not only what the market is doing, but also maybe you need to even consider the factory. How's the factory doing? So there are a lot of elements we actually want to maintain. I will never start a company.
and the failures, you asked what potentially led to some of these failures. I think a lot of it has to do with poor investment decisions, over-evaluation about what potential these companies and products have, and also just, sometimes bad luck. Sometimes they might have a great product and it just doesn't take off, or they didn't sell it properly.
Or met a perfect storm.
Yeah, so I think there's a variety of factors that lead to failures. Some of it is due to bad luck, but some of it's also due to mismanagement as well.
Yes, definitely that. And also it could be just a subject of pragmatic choices of today, because if you see your company is just not doing well, is bleeding, hemorrhaging, and your product simply isn't picking up, then maybe it's just best to close up. Or before it goes into what's called
liquidation.
Zombie.
Oh, right.
A zombie state.
Yeah.
That is, it might survive, but it's super challenging to secure additional funding for growth. And then that lingering limbo situation is not great. So that's one of the reasons. And do you think there is a cautionary tale to be told? Do you think that the parties involved will actually learn a lesson? And also, just to offer a little bit of a supporting point to what you guys said earlier, don't forget, it's not just the middle level people or the grassroots level employees that are losing out because they're probably laid off, but also, investors.
But I mean, they're so rich anyway, a lot of them.
Well, yeah, but if you're talking about, let's say, a company like WeWork, or a lot of them actually have gone public.
Yes, right.
And therefore, you've got, the little ones who are losing out on it as
potentially losing life savings.
So never, just bank on one company when it comes to...
For sure.
Yeah. So, sorry. So my question is, the cautionary tale or possible lessons to be learned here. Is it going to happen?
I guess the cautionary tale should fall mostly on potential investors, like you said, that are at that mid-level, So do your due diligence and maybe diversify your portfolio, and don't just bank on one company or product to really take off. I think, manage your risks. I would say that would probably be the best advice to give to investors that are, mid-level earners.
Yeah, and another thing I think has something to do with the current trend globally, the economic environment. If we are looking at certain companies here in China, due to the great development of live stream platforms and stuff, actually a lot of even food and snack companies have taken on that horse and started to do a lot of strategic adjustments to advertise their product, and they have achieved quite good results. And all that showed us that learn about the bigger environment, understand the bigger picture, understand that sometimes the supply chain might not be as stable. Sometimes after a certain period of time, maybe working in healthcare is not going to be as favorable as a couple of years ago. All that is also quite important, and I think that's what many capitalists are looking at as well.
Yeah.
Certainly focus on sustainable growth. I think you guys mentioned that. And also tech startups can learn from the challenges faced by their predecessors and what's happening, what's been going on this year. Also,
transparency from their side too, I think, is also very important. So if your product's not ready and it's not delivering what you've promised, be honest with investors, be honest with the public. I think that's also very important, that these billion-dollar valued companies are transparent.
Yeah, well, see, there are supposedly legal mechanisms or investment mechanisms in place, but are they shrewdly followed?
I think there are these laws in place, but I think there's also naughty companies and naughty directors, so we have to keep an eye on them too.
And that, but is that going to happen? Yeah.
Probably not.
And so we're talking about, tightening the screws if possible, more supervision if possible. Also, there are usually these, very well-known accounting companies as such who keep an eye and help these companies go public. And hello, what's been going on in this part, So there's a lot to...
Naughty accountants too.
A lot of naughty parties.
Yeah.
And this is definitely one of those areas that a lot of money is going in and a lot of returns are coming out, but not always. And we'll keep you updated in the tech unicorns. We'll be back after this break. How are you? What's on your mind? Let's have a heart-to-heart on Roundtable. Ask us anything. We'll help you answer it. Send a voice memo to EZFM Roundtable at foxmail.com. We'll play your question on Roundtable, then talk through it on the live show. Take care. We can't wait for heart-to-heart with you.
Looking for passion? How about fiery debate? Want to hear about current events in China from different perspectives? Then tune in to Roundtable.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Roundtable, coming to you live from Beijing. Roundtable.
Connecting China and the world.
We bring you fun and timely discussions about what's affecting our lives everywhere, every day. Tune in to Roundtable, where the East meets the West, and understanding is the goal.
Discussion keeps the world turning.
This is Roundtable.
You're listening to Roundtable with myself, He Young. I'm joined by Neil Honglin and Brandon Yates in the studio. Next up, get ready for a chilling revelation. Antarctic tourism is on the rise, but can this frozen paradise handle the influx of thrill seekers? And for those caught up in the hustle of the 9-to-5 routine, a comforting cup of steaming caffeine, be it coffee or tea, is often the go-to companion. But for those who opt to use their personal cups, we care about the environment. The question arises, before or after work, when is the best time to give it a good old wash? Find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any podcast platform of your choice. But hey, the party doesn't stop there. We want to hear your voice on the show. Got curious thoughts or burning questions? Record them and send them our way at EZFM Roundtable at foxmail.com and take part in our heart-to-heart segment. Let's turn up the volume together. Now on Roundtable as we continue today's discussion. Imagine lounging on a lavish cruise ship, basking in the shimmering glow of ancient glaciers, exchanging pleasantries with penguins and seals on floating ice. Sounds like the ultimate bucket list, right? Well, hold on tight as we dive into the chilly wonders of Antarctic tourism. Find out why Chinese global trotters are setting sail for this icy paradise, enduring a 30-day journey and shelling out over 100,000 yuan, or that's about 14 grand US dollars. So give us an overview on the customer profile, maybe, and market size for Antarctica travel in China.
Sure. Actually, when it comes to traveling to Antarctic, it's not actually something that's been, I would say, something completely new. It's been the dream for a lot of people for quite a long time. When I say a lot of people, I mean those who are heavy travelers. They travel to different places.
People that have traveled
already a lot.
Yeah, so it's not normally the first destination that pops up in people's minds.
No. But recently, we get to see that the consumer demographic is becoming younger when it comes to this type of trip. Currently, the age group of 50 to 70 remains the main consumer base for the Antarctic tours, accounting for about 80% of the total.
And that's generally the bucket list kind of category as well. That's people that are kind of wanting to do certain things before they, pick the bucket. Yeah.
Also, they have the money.
Yes, exactly.
However, we get to see that there has been this increase in the proportion of young people participating in Antarctic group tours, with a potential rise from less than 10% to around 20%. And industry insiders are saying it's probably that the proportion can go up to 30%.
Which is global, right? Not just China.
Yes.
Okay.
But this is really quite prominent because they do not have that amount of money and they haven't traveled to all of other places yet they are, let's say, cultivating or having this growing interest in Antarctic tours.
You know what I think it is? I think that young people are they have access to so much through social media and, having the means to travel, etc. I think that's finding unique experiences is becoming more and more important to youngsters. So I think that's probably why something like Antarctica, and that's probably not the only example, but sort of unique destinations that not necessarily everybody goes to or has the ability to go to, that would become more popular with young people because they want to be the ones that did something that others haven't.
And actually on Roundtable, we've talked about the fact that young people are chasing after a more immersive and unique and special experience when it comes to traveling. And this special kind of traveling to this special part of the world contains another element. That is, when you travel to Antarctic, you get to travel on a ship, a cruise, or through a flight, or anyway, in this group with certain experts with all the knowledge about this special place in the world. They know about the weather, the environment.
You can't just go.
Exactly.
It's not like Paris. You can't just go there and jump off a plane and walk around.
Sorry, Paris.
But I mean, Antarctica is the type of place where you can't just hop off a plane and say, well, I'm in Antarctica now. I think you definitely need some experts to show you around.
And the experts showing you around do not only tell you where to go. They have all the information, all the knowledge about different animals, different plants, how, I don't know, did certain iceberg float here? Maybe they don't have that information, but the idea is that you feel eye-opening in both feel and also knowledge-wise, which is very attracting to curious young minds nowadays.
Yeah, I guess so.
I mean, for me, I've always had this ambition of wanting to go to all of the continents, and Antarctica is a continent, I believe. And it's kind of at the back of my mind. I kind of feel like, well, if I've been to the other 6 continents, that counts because Antarctica is just this big block of ice. Well, that's how people think. But it's always kind of been on the back of my mind that one day when I do reach that age group, the 50 to 70 age group, hopefully I get there, then I would look at Antarctica. But it's interesting to see that younger people are looking at a destination like that at an earlier stage in their life because I mean, other destinations where you can do a lot more and have a more relaxed individual experience seems more appealing to young people, I would think, than something like that requires, an expert to show you around.
But also, I would think it's more physically challenging for people as well. So maybe it makes sense for young people to do that.
I mean,
they can handle it, like they can handle the conditions and...
Yeah, you don't want to wait until your joints are aching and you need a walking cane.
Cold.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to allude to those ageism examples, but the thing is, you need to be physically fit to do this. So there's the price issue, there is the fitness issue, as well as maybe this is something that Brandon has already mentioned, and maybe I have an echoing point to that, which is these days, well, of course, it's not news that young people live on social media, and therefore, I don't know if you have this feeling, but sometimes there's a little sense of jealousy that arises.
Oh, definitely. 100%. That's why I travel, to make my friends jealous.
And show off on social media. Always the 9 perfectly selected pictures that go together neatly and with a beautiful
It's all about the stories.
In the
all about the stories.
And and you're just slaving away in the office, and you see that happen with somebody else's life. And therefore, like, going to travel and also the immersive experience is what millennials apparently love.
They're willing to go to the ends of the earth to make my family jealous.
Bingo!
Yeah.
The most unusual place I can go on Earth is probably Antarctica. And the next thing that's being penciled down is when you have enough money in the ranks of maybe like Jeff Bezos, and then you can travel for space. Or this year, that horrible tragedy of the
Titanic thing.
Yes, the Titan.
I forgot what it was called, but I know exactly the very small vessel. Yes,
implosion that happened
terrible.
In June this year, and that's just another example of adventure tourism. This is what young people possibly would like to do, and if they could fund that project, you probably need to have really rich parents to do that. And unfortunately, there was this
or be the CEO of a unicorn company at 25, like Mark Zuckerberg or something like that.
Oh, that's really interesting. Actually, this is
I know exactly what you're going to talk about, the bunker that he's building. Oh no, I'll jump into that soon.
Oh, okay.
Shall I go first?
You sure?
So allegedly, Mark Zuckerberg has bought this huge plot of land in Hawaii, and he's building this massive palatial palace or whatever. And he's also, half of that is going to be underground, and he's apparently preparing food and shelter and like preparing for some sort of apocalypse. So people are freaking out because they're thinking, well, he's this high-powered guy. Maybe he has access to... I should not be spinning conspiracy theories on the show. But, so that's also something that, there's an example of somebody that's able to do something unique and crazy because they have the financial means to do so.
Right.
And he's young, so he probably does things that old people wouldn't think about.
And what I was trying to get at was that the average age of unicorn companies apparently is 43 years old. So they're young enough to go trotting wherever and a slightly dangerous but not too dangerous place. And so these polar adventures are no small feat, both in miles and expenditure. What makes these pricey what makes these escapades a hot favorite among Chinese wanderers? I think maybe it has something to do with the younger generation. Maybe just building on the backs of their hardworking parents, have a little bit more money to
I feel attacked. I'm one of those people.
It's a weird mood I'm in today. I'm sorry, our dear listeners.
No, but you're accurate. It's 100% right.
Yeah, and at the same time, actually, if you tell your parents instead of a travel experience you want to enjoy, it's a study trip you're signing up.
Products. You see how important being able to sell a product is?
So good.
You just re-angle it, and then all of a sudden the investors, the parents are like, well, that's great. Here's $1 billion.
Yeah, you can sell me anything, and I'll just buy up. Yes, because I looked into the actual items and also the things you would do on such trip. Of course, you have to cover, the money covers the, let's say, the airline, the cruise ticket, the hotels and entry fee, and of course, the expert that will escort you the entire way. In the same time, actually, there are certain items that would attract young kids. For example, they get to meet not only the professional experts, but also the amateur experts from all walks of life signing up for the trip. They get to talk to, like you guys said, the relatively elder folks who have an interest and have the money to go to these extreme places. Being friends with them is no harm. Definitely.
You mean it becomes a networking event?
The older generation explains to the younger generation,
from them.
hey, here's how you can continue to spend your parents' money. Go on this trip, go on this trip.
Invest in my company, which is worth nothing right now.
Guys, I've just started this brand new company. Could you give $1 billion from your parents? That'd be great, thanks.
That's not the point, but in the meantime, from a very younger, let's say, stage of your life, you get to see the extreme of the extreme, and you get to see how come the environment, being environmentally friendly is actually useful. You get to see whether or not, because we do have example of actual high school students taking up on such trip and decided that, wow, I do love what I've seen, and I want to be a college major in related subjects, and that is something very useful.
Yeah, and I think it's also great that young people that do, look, I mean, some people do have access to money from their parents, and, good for them, but it's also great to hear that they are using that to have these unique experiences at a young age that they might not necessarily be able to do, like you said, at an older age, which I think is, it's spending money, but it seems like it's spending money on a really positive, fulfilling experience, as opposed to just going to like a nightclub and spending $100,000 on alcohol, which some kids do.
And also, some people, maybe they don't necessarily have rich parents or whoever that's supporting them, but it's something.
Again.
And they're just funding this themselves, and some people really treat this as one of the bucket list items. And also, I think it also, we're not judging, but if you have some really meaningful takeaways from the experience, then I think that's the best kind of thing.
Absolutely.
But not always do people do that. And now I want to ask you guys, sort of moving away a little bit from people's why they decide to go on the trip to what's the impact of tourism on the Antarctic continent? Because since the 1960s, commercial travel or these tourism groups usually going on cruise ships have started their way, and now it's a few decades later, and
it's grown substantially.
So,
so there's probably an environmental effect,
Definitely. Actually, the visits of tourists may affect the work of local scientific research teams to start with, because if your routes actually interact with each other, there could be potential problems. And in the meantime, there would be impact on local wildlife, despite the stronger awareness of current tourist organizations to leave no trace in the local environment.
It's a very volatile area.
Exactly. There's still human activities that may still have an impact on it, and a study published in Antarctic Science this year found that tourists could be disturbing the penguins on one of the continent's most popular islands. And even though many of the tourists would say that you should be, for example, not less than 10 meters close with the penguins, still, if they see you, it's not what they usually see. It would affect their behavior, then could leave a long-lasting effect. And of course, there would be impact on the environment, like Brennan has already mentioned.
And disrupting research in that area going forward could be potentially very damaging, because I think a lot of what happens in those polar ice caps has an effect on the global environment.
Yes, and you mentioned penguins. Good point. Antarctica is the only permanent landing area for the emperor penguins. They're like so magnificent.
That's the ones
and
with
beautiful.
the yellow, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. And they
You've got a lot of penguins in Cape Town too.
Oh yeah, they're a different type.
Yeah,
they're a little bit smaller and a little naughtier by the look.
Yeah, they are. They're quite cheeky, and they are smaller and cuter in my opinion.
Okay. When I went to your country on a business trip a few years ago, it was just fascinating to see those. They all have their own individual species names, and I unfortunately don't remember them now. But it left me
quite the impression.
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah, and the emperor penguins spend their whole lives on Antarctica and its waters. Emperors are the only animal to spend the winter on the Antarctic ice. And yes, there's definitely a huge environmental impact we're talking about here. In the most visited areas, researchers have found that the snow has a higher concentration of black carbon from ship exhaust, absorbing heat and accelerating the melt. On parts of the Arctic peninsula, this may be causing surface snow to melt up to 23 millimeters each summer. And another study calculated that each visitor between 2016 and 2020 was in effect melting 75 tons of snow just by visiting Antarctica. And at tourist hotspots, the effect of that influx is even more apparent. Queues of cruise liners wait up at the Bay Area, and fuel spills and collisions between vessels and marine life have been recorded. And in some areas, tourists have been walking over delicate mosses and plants, and some historic structures have been scarred by graffiti. And these are all reported by The Guardian.
This can all be managed, though, right? It's good that this information is coming out, and hopefully there are authorities in place in those areas that should be heavily protected to not to rid the area of tourism, but it definitely sounds like it needs to be managed better, and hopefully that will happen in the future. One example that I can think of from my personal experiences with nature tourism was in Thailand when we went to go visit the Phi Islands. We were allowed to swim in the ocean near the beach, but the beach was entirely closed off because of over-tourism, and they needed to let certain plants regrow and, sort out pollution and that sort of thing. So the tourists were banned from actually stepping onto the beach. And I think similar measures can be taken in Antarctica to protect areas that are, being damaged, or, protecting researchers and animals, etc.
Oh, for sure. Actually, there is the International Association of Antarctica Tour Operators. It is founded in 1991. It's a member organization that promotes safe and environmentally responsible travel to the place. And the fact is, if you are, very informative, and you have the ability to do your own research and to actually organize or plan your own trip to the icy wonderland, then you should at least make sure that you're in a group or on a ship that is a member. You can't go on your own for sure. But ultimately, the industry remains self-regulated, despite the fact that there are some of these rules in place, and therefore we're seeing that it is causing problems.
Yeah.
And this is one area that when you talk about, how to go about this forward, should you limit the number of people going there? Because at the moment there is no cap, and the numbers keep on rising. And if you say that we want to limit the number, then who gets to choose what people gets to go there?
No cap is like an Urban Dictionary term. It means like I'm not lying. People say no cap.
Yeah, we're no cap on this show.
That can be managed, right? I'm sure something can be done.
But it's easier said than done.
Yeah, and it also raises
problem.
prices, and that also comes with its own problems. So I think whatever they do to protect that environment, I think there's going to be a knock-on effect for either party, for the tourists or for people trying to protect that area. I think there needs to be some sort of management there, and I think regardless of what they do, it's going to be tricky. It's a tricky thing to deal with.
And that's what we're talking about. And when we look at the really fragile situation and the ecosystems that may be a risk, and we look at the future, and I think this is just a really delicate balance, and
it's in a very delicate area too.
Indeed. Yeah. I am a firm believer, and I believe this little line has relevance here. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. But I'm actually a little bit surprised with Brandon's reaction today, because I thought you might be one of those people who's firmly on the side that I should go because I'm an outdoorsy person and I like exploring.
It's definitely on my list for sure, and I think people should go. But I also think that it does need to be managed. But with that being said,
and
we don't want people missing out on that experience, but we also really need to protect that area. So it's a very difficult management situation to deal with.
And someone at the other end of the spectrum could say, just ban it. Why would you allow people to go? These people don't behave themselves. Human beings, aren't we familiar with what they do? That is, they find something delicate, unique, absolutely, utterly beautiful. And hopefully we don't go there.
I really hope so. And I think it's going to be a very tricky thing to manage. And maybe that is necessary. Maybe we do need periods where people need to be banned completely from going there.
And that's the thing, because going to Arctic travel, actually you can only go in so-called summertime. So therefore, I'm not really making an argument for going there, but the thing is, automatically, because of the natural existence of this place, then there are only these X amount of months that you can go, and already they're wreaking havoc. So,
and I think the more exclusive and unique and difficult it becomes to go there, the more popular it's going to become as well, because then you can have a whole bunch of people trying to get into that exclusive Antarctica club. You know what I mean?
Make it even pricier.
That's the thing. So I think that's eventually what people are going to have to learn to deal with, is that if we're going to protect this area and keep it sustainable, it is going to become more and more expensive.
And then it's going to be like, is it only the ultra-rich have the privilege to go? So
Supply demand. Everyone wants an iPhone, but they can't afford it.
Thanks to the company policy or whatnot, it's becoming a little bit more affordable, but we'll see. And there are plenty of other options out there. Coming up next, before or after work, when's the best time to wash your mug? Stay tuned.
Looking for passion? How about fiery debate? Want to hear about current events in China from different perspectives? Then tune in to Roundtable, where East meets West, and understanding is the goal.
It's the hour of Roundtable with myself, He Young. I'm joined by New Holland and Brandon Yates in the studio. When it comes to washing cups, office workers typically fall into two camps. Those who wash them before work to start the day with a sense of ritual, and those who wash them after work to conclude a busy day. Actually, there's a third group of individuals who, believe it or not, don't wash their mugs at all. From a health and hygiene perspective, how often should cups be washed, and when's the best time to do so?
Well, I think it depends. As long as you wash it at least once a day, I think it works.
Hey.
See, we have a surpriser here already.
Really?
Yeah, because actually,
depends on what you drink also.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. Because it depends on material or what your mug is made of. If it's plastic, if it's, for some people, I'm not gonna call them cheap, but if they're using single-use cups,
you cheapos.
doing a terrible thing to the environment.
Yeah,
or maybe they have
don't do it anymore. That's why my purpose for this discussion is that just come with your own
mug. We're here to tell our
mug.
listeners what to do. Stop it. Enough.
Yes, and also some would use even steel cups. I know we call it gangsugang here.
Not like being a theft.
No. It's the material, but it's actually quite, I would say hygiene-wise, quite good. And also there is the best kind, that is the glass cups. They're actually quite good. And ceramics maybe can be...
I think my cup is ceramic.
Oh, good.
Our
good
company
for
cup,
you.
the one that changes color when it gets hot.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I use that.
That's
ceramics, right?
I guess so. And according to a survey, only 9.6% of respondents wash their mugs immediately after use, which is recommended, while 40% wash them once a day, which is acceptable in my opinion, and a significant 20% wash their mugs even less frequently, which I believe include Brendan.
Yeah. Well, what does wash mean? What does wash mean? Like with soap and with a cloth, as in washing the dish?
Or at least just rinse it.
Yeah, so I rinse my cup with boiling water, but apparently that's not enough.
Okay, also...
In your opinion, do you think I need to do more?
I think you should at least use a brush or use your hands to make sure no residue stays within your cup, because actually it depends on, of course, what you drink. But
just black coffee, always.
Black coffee, do you have sugar in it?
No.
Because sugary beverages like cola and milk coffee showed exceptionally high bacterial counts.
But I think that's also visible too. Like, I think that kind of bacteria is more visible, and you would hope that people that see a visibly filthy cup would wash it. But when it's just black coffee, when I rinse it out with boiling water, that visibly it looks clean to me. But I could be wrong. But I mean, it looks okay.
You should be fine, because there are so many bad apples out there. In comparison, you don't look so bad.
I'm okay compared to the people that apparently never wash their cup.
Well, but some people would even have a separate mug for their coffee and clean it immediately after using it, and have another mug for their water to make
now
sure
we're on to the psychopaths.
We're on to the very clean and hygiene person.
Yes, indeed. And it makes perfect sense, because you separate, like, the one mug is probably best for, the beverages that might leave a stain, which means you should,
These are the people that keep their left socks in one drawer and their right socks in another drawer.
Well, actually, you'd be surprised, because she has very specially picked out socks with beautiful design, and yes, all wrapped up, rolled up neatly.
I love colorful socks.
Yeah,
I love people that have wild, funky socks. I always think that's fun.
Just drew it up.
One little detail is that if you drink green tea, it's actually better than even water when it comes to the residue-creating environment for bacteria. So if you drink green tea, maybe you can wash it, I don't know.
I love green tea.
1 to 2 days. That's my limit.
Yeah. And apparently, if you have just a mug with water, that's what you drink.
Yeah.
You don't need to wash it every day. You're gonna wash it every day.
I think you still also need to be aware of what's around, because if you leave a cup in a dirty office and then dust particles get into the mug, so there's that element
Always
as well.
keep the lid on.
Yeah,
that's really useful, especially if you're leaving your stuff in the office. Well, if you're hot desking, then it's a different story. And that's it for today's roundtable. You guys have a beautiful day. Bye.
Are you interested in learning Chinese? I always tell my students that listening is the key to mastering the language. Check out Takeaway Chinese, where you can start learning the language quickly and enjoyably, no matter if you're a rookie or a sophisticated Chinese learner.
我来北京5年了，我是本地人。
There is definitely something that will interest you. Check out Takeaway Chinese.
A word starts with 你好。
Ever worried that you'll miss out on breaking events? Tune in to today to get the latest news and analysis on the important stories in China and around the globe. Today, illuminating the news that matters to you.
kínai nemzetközi rádió. Pekingből közvetítjük magyar nyelvű adásunkat.
Jó estét kívánunk, kedves hallgatóink! A Kínai Nemzetközi Rádió hétvégi adását hallják Pekingből rövid és középhullámon. Hétvégi műsorunkban zenés összeállítása és alapvető információkkal szolgálunk a hagyományos kínai kultúráról. Várjuk javaslatainkat, véleményeket.
促进发展的有利。
Since the conflict began in October. where 250 Palestinians died over 24 hours on Christmas. The families of Hamas hostages have gathered at the main gate of the Israeli Defense Ministry complex in Tel Aviv, pressuring cabinet ministers to negotiate deals for the release of hostages.
I don't know who is going to come, but if it will be the Prime Minister, I will tell him that he's responsible to what happened in October 7, and he needs to fix it. He needs to bring them back as soon as possible, because they don't have any time over there in the tunnels, and their lives are in danger.
Hamas took more than 200 hostages after it launched a surprise raid into southern Israel on October 7th. It's demanded the release of Palestinian prisoners in exchange for the hostages. A UN humanitarian team leader says many Palestinians in Gaza are facing difficulties in finding a safe place in the enclave. Kamel says the Israeli army has designated certain areas for Palestinians who have only found there's little space left. She described what she saw as a human chessboard where thousands have been displaced many times but are on the run again without guarantee for a safe destination. Israel has been urged to take further steps to minimize civilian harm by identifying safe areas and clearing humanitarian routes for people to escape. More Harrison has more people fleeing to central and southern Gaza.
The idea pointed at the city as the safe area for the Palestinians, people to take shelter in its camps. So at the same time, there is intense battles here on the ground, and specifically talking about Middle Gaza, Al-Maghazi refugee camp, Al-Burej refugee camp, Al-Nusayrat refugee camp. All of these camps are located in an area that we call Middle Gaza, and it's separating northern Gaza from southern Gaza. And apparently the same scenario of the Israeli land incursion that happened in northern Gaza and in southern Gaza now newly happening in Middle Gaza. Overnight non-stop bombings, shelling, exchange fire. According to Israeli media, 300 missiles and 80 strikes hit the camps and cities around Middle Gaza overnight. Palestinians do feel that this is a new Israeli incursion in Middle Gaza in order to separate Gaza to three parts: northern, middle, and southern Gaza.
That was Noor Harrison in Gaza. Refugees from the camp in Khan Yunis are in urgent need of the most basic necessities, including food. Khalid Kanan said the shortages affect at least 60% of the 30,000 refugees based in the camp.
We have got no bread to eat. There's nothing here, no flour, blankets. At the Khan Yunis refugee camp, people are often barely clothed.
Yes, and many people injured by Israeli bombings are unable to receive treatment due to the lack of healthcare supplies and necessary medication. Kanan also said those more vulnerable are facing health risks at the camp due to the limited facilities.
We all face obstacles. When I wake up, I need to go to the bathroom, but I can't go wherever I want. I have to wait an hour, okay? But what about a diabetic? What should they do? It's a serious issue. What can they do? It's a terrible situation.
The UN estimates that around 1.1 million people in Gaza have been displaced since the conflict broke out in October. That's 85% of the population of the strip. Some shipping companies have announced plans to resume operations in the Red Sea despite previous attempts. Along the shipping routes have forced vessels, resulting in longer transportation time and higher costs. Trent Marie has more.
Well, we are starting to see, I suppose you could say, the results of this major international naval operation, which is being led by the US. It's called Operation Prosperity Guardian, and it includes over a dozen countries working to try and safeguard those vital shipping lanes in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden, an extremely important route for global trade. Around 12% of global trade traverses those waters every year, and it is really the main shipping highway between Europe and Asia. We are seeing now that some of those container ship companies and traders are beginning to return to those waters after initially saying they were suspending traffic because of those Houthi attacks. Maersk, the world's shipping container company, announced that it would once again begin sending ships through the Suez Canal, through the Gulf of Aden, but we are also seeing tensions continuing to be red hot there. The US Navy saying in the past couple of days that the Houthis actually launched a direct attack on one of their ships, sending kamikaze drones towards the USS Laboon, and they say they were able to shoot down all 4 of those drones, but it does show that tensions on those waters still remain very high.
That was Trent Murray reporting. Coming up, demonstrators are back to the streets of Belgrade against the alleged election fraud in Serbia.
Dive into news like never before with Deep Dive, the podcast from CGTN Radio. Join our global reporters for captivating stories and thought-provoking conversations. Search Deep Dive on your favorite podcast platforms. Get ready to dive in.
It's 8 minutes past the hour. Demonstrators have returned to the streets of Belgrade to protest against the alleged fraud in Serbia's general election. The opposition has been staging daily protests since the ruling party claimed victory earlier this month. Supporters of the opposition stormed the city council building and demanded the election results be annulled. Police say they have detained dozens of people. Alyosha Milenkovic has more from Belgrade.
Fewer people turned out than on Sunday evening, but the demonstrators made the same demands. In front of the State Election Commission, they asked for all election results to be annulled, while Serbian authorities rejected the allegations. Many people remain convinced that the ruling SNS party tampered with the voter list, rigging the election results.
We came here this evening in peace, and this will remain peaceful, but that won't last forever. The wall is behind us, and against it, we are concerned. In front of us are police cordons.
Despite of the heated rhetoric, there was no reported violence incident in Belgrade. And earlier in the day, the Serbian police chief held a press conference accusing the protesters of organizing Sunday's violence against police guarding some of the state institutions.
Members of the Ministry of Interior for 3 hours. They withheld from intervening, hoping the violence would not escalate and that the police would stop with their attacks. During that time, 8 police officers were injured.
Students joined the protests by blocking some streets for several hours, creating massive traffic jams around the city. And while the internal tensions in the country are seemingly under control, the Russian ambassador to Serbia said in a televised interview that there was, and I'll quote, irrefutable evidence that these demonstrations are being orchestrated by the West. Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić says his government is under attack by foreign political factors, instigating the unrest.
That was Alyosha Milenkovic in the Serbian capital. A week after a strong earthquake in northwest China, people in affected regions have returned to their homes to assess the damage and rebuild their houses. They are doing that with the help of rescue forces and volunteers. Lucy Ray spoke with some residents about the devastation and their plans to resume their normal lives.
Chenjia village is one of the worst-hit regions in Jishishan County. The earthquake has caught people off guard when it struck before the midnight of December 18th. It has damaged and flattened homes of more than 2,000 residents here. Locals say they have never experienced anything like this before.
Adobe houses are common in the villages of northeastern China. But the memory of the earthquake that struck here is still fresh in Magahu's mind. The happy memories he shared with his family are now replaced with flashbacks from that horrible night.
I was so scared. I carried my grandson and put him here, and then I came back to get my wife, who'd already fallen because things had collapsed onto her.
Mahema is hardly able to recognize his home. The door to his bedroom can no longer be opened. On the night of the earthquake, Mai and his family had to climb through a window to escape into the darkness. Among them, a 40-day-old baby and an 80-year-old woman. Locals say 95% of the residents in Chenjia village are Muslims. Their mosque has been badly damaged, so daily prayers have moved to the parking lot in front of the building, despite a freezing minus 10 degrees Celsius.
The mosque was built in 2002 and renovated in 2007. It was supposed to last longer. It's too cold to pray outside. It will be too hot in the summer. The damage to the mosque has really disrupted our life. We hope the government helps us to rebuild it soon.
22 people died on the night of the earthquake. All of them have been dug out from the rubble by the bare hands of their neighbors and given a proper burial. The imam of the village cried throughout recent prayers. From the perspective of his religion, he says tears and an aching heart will make Allah protect them and their homeland.
The effect of the disaster is too big for people here, so I pray for the peace of these people, the peace of my country, and that of the world. We're all human beings, even though we have different religions and faiths. When others suffer, we feel pain. When we suffer, others come to help us too. The government has especially helped a lot after the earthquake. They've done a lot of work.
The village is currently filled with rescue teams from across China. Government and volunteer groups have flooded here to help relocate villagers and rebuild their lives. There's still a long way to go before things return to normal, but at least the locals know they're not alone.
That was Lucy Ray in Gansu Province.